Real stories of werewolves, of Dogman history, from your emails, illustrated and animated with the democratizing magic of machine learning AI. Welcome to Scary Stories.
Sasquatch ambushed by rock-throwing dogmen. Dear Scary Stories NYC, my wife and I bought our first house in the later 1970s, but we searched for over 6 months before deciding on the right place. The very first home we looked at seemed perfect in every way, but fortunately fate let us know that the property was like cryptid heaven, or cryptid hell, depending on how you look at it. There wasn't just one kind of cryptid over there either. There was a turf war going on behind the house. This all took place in maybe an hour or less, but it takes a certain finesse to tell the story well, so buckle up and watch out, because I am not a good driver. Now, we don't want to get too specific about the location, but if you ever find a home in rural Pennsylvania, about 2 hours outside of Pittsburgh, priced way cheaper than any comparable house in the state, then you may have spotted the place where this all happened. Even back then, the owners had lowered their price somewhat drastically in their eagerness to move out. When we met those owners, we asked them why the place was so cheap, and we were met with non-committal answers. When we asked if the house was haunted, the two of them looked at each other guiltily before insisting that ghosts were not in that residence. One problem they insisted we would not have there was being haunted by ghosts. But the way they said it made us both wonder what other problems this place came with that they were hoping we wouldn't ask direct questions about. We were wondering how much of the adjoining property would belong to us if we bought it, and we were surprised to learn that the house came with a small woods in the back, the entire small woods. At that price, for that home in decent condition, plus our own freaking forest, it seemed like a fairyland super deal, and 99% of me was more excited than any 1% of me has ever been. We asked for a tour of the woods in the back, and the owners looked surprised and terrified by the request. They looked at those trees like they were going to run up and eat them, but the husband told us we were welcome to take a walk back there if we really wanted to. His wife seemed unhappy with that answer, but she didn't open her mouth to disagree or contradict him, so off we went into the woods behind the house, curious to consider the possibility that we could, if we decided to, buy and own our own little woodland. I personally hadn't even realized such a thing was affordable to us, and it was going to take something really terrible to dissuade us from taking the plunge and becoming the owners of that property. That was when my wife started coughing and choking. I was about to ask her what was wrong when I smelled it too. Holding our noses, we looked through some leaves and bushes to feast our eyes on an authentic, genuine, super tall, sleek and black-furred Pennsylvania Bigfoot. My wife and I had both been believers in Bigfoot since before we met, although we were far from experts on the subject. It was too fascinating to look away, though, so we pulled our shirts up over our noses to filter the air a bit, and we kept on watching. This was one of those peaceful Bigfoot, like they always used to talk about on TV back then. This Bigfoot wouldn't have known what to do if the $6 million man wanted to pick a fight with him, or the bionic woman either. This Bigfoot seemed to want to live a peaceful life. We watched it look into a nest with baby birds in it. When the mama bird flew back squawking, that Bigfoot backed off and moved away from her chicks. This was like Harry from Harry and the Hendersons. I figured he was the reason the owners were afraid to walk back there with us, and at first, that made me chuckle inside at them. Let me give you some advice. Never chuckle at a homeowner's attitude toward their own property. They know it better than you do. My wife and I came from the city, so we thought we were somehow smarter than those people who had been struggling to live on that land for so long, yet who were so eager to move that they were willing to sell it to us for a price so low that they weren't even going to find themselves a shack in return. We figured they were superstitious yokels. We weren't afraid of a gentle old sasquatch we had seen In Search of with Leonard Spock, so we were sophisticated and educated, and all the other catids too. Before I even got done laughing, though, I found out that the joke was on me. Bam! Bam! Whack! A rain of stones fell down out of the sky, all around that Bigfoot in front of us. Then one whizzed right between my wife and me, so we dropped down low. It seemed all the rocks were being fired from some position on the other side of that Bigfoot, so he was probably the intended target. Maneuvering to a better spot, I was able to peek out and see that there were humanoid figures in the bushes and trees on that far side of that Sasquatch. My first idea was that it was members of the family, the one we would be buying this property from, but those people seemed too afraid to come back here. When I saw that the size of the silhouettes was too large to be those people, my next thought was that this must be another group of Bigfoots. Maybe they were kicking the peaceful one out of their tribe or something. My wife and I realized we were in the line of fire, so we had to move, and move fast. We did not withdraw or retreat, though. We instead moved to a side position, where now we could see the Bigfoot on our left getting pelted, and we could see the rocks emerging from the woods to our right, even if we could not yet see who or what was doing that rock throwing. I'll be honest, in that moment, my wife had such an excited expression on her face, I don't think she was scared at all, even with the rocks flying. I know my heart was beating 1,000,000 times a minute, but I too was not aware enough to know how scared I should have probably been. I know I was already thinking that we were going to buy this land, and we were going to invite Spock from Star Trek to come stay here for a month with his In Search of film crew. Then me, my wife, and Spock would all become millionaires and get to play tennis with Johnny Carson. We'd have been the real-life version of the Beverly Hillbillies. I had stars in my 1979 eyes, but I had to wipe them away so that I could see the 3 figures advancing out of the woods. They had gotten the Bigfoot on our left down, and from our right, we got our first clear views of the humanoid figures that had been throwing those stones. They had heads so strange that both my wife and I fell off our crouched positions, back onto our behinds in the dirt. These creatures were bigger than me, but not as big as the Sasquatch. They had claw-like hands instead of paws, and they stood like squatches, but they weren't the same thing. Their heads didn't look ape-like at all, or human, or anything that I had been expecting. They had the heads of different kinds of dogs, including snouts with black noses and ears up way too high on the sides of their heads. If it was just one of them, I'd call it a freak Bigfoot. But there were 3 of them, and they all resembled dogs in different ways from each other. The one furthest from us looked like a big black wolf with pointed triangular ears up on top. The closest one from our position looked like a humanoid version of a golden retriever dog, including the floppy dog ears. The middle one, between those 2, I guess might have been the most humanoid of them all. He had fingers that most resembled those of a human. His hair on his head also seemed longer, in a way similar to that of human beings. He is the one who, to me, with his pointed dog ears up over that werewolf face, I thought looked like a wolf man from the movies. He wasn't wearing clothing like Lon Chaney or anything, but he looked like a werewolf to me and my wife both. Of course, if you consider him a wolfman, then you have to consider the possibility that all three were werewolves, or something like werewolves. I had never heard of the Dogman, and neither had my wife. This was Pennsylvania in 1979, and In Search Of had never done a Dogman episode. My dreams were dashed. If we went to the producers of In Search Of and told them that we saw dog-headed men throwing rocks at a Bigfoot, why, we'd be laughed at. Nobody in that era was going to take a story like that seriously. In fact, it sounds kind of crazy to me even now when I say it out loud. The next strike against us buying the property was strike 3, no matter where you might start the countdown from. And that was that my wife and I had to witness a few seconds of the savagery of those animals as they burst into ferocious combat with each other. The noises they made as they threw themselves into a kind of nasty fighting that I'd never seen before were enough to make every hair on my body stand on end. My decision had already been made for me, and yet this show was only just beginning. The largest and heaviest man I'd ever seen came running, thump, 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 up behind the two of us. We both turned and dove out of the way at the same time, as this huge, hairy, entirely unclothed man ran and leaped over us and into the field beyond. When I was able to find a new position to peer out at the situation through, I could feel the ground trembling in every direction. Into that field flowed Bigfoot after Bigfoot, each of them joining the battle until leaves rained down off trees all around us. Each of them looked like they came from the same family. I could only differentiate them by size. It felt like the entire forest was going to come down on our heads. So my wife grabbed my hand and suggested strongly that we exit post-haste. We ran away back to the house, where the owners greeted us, grinning and cackling about how pale we'd become since we'd left. They also made a comment about the stench we brought back with us. You know, they weren't grinning and joking when we told them we no longer had any interest in their property, though. Well, at least I imagine they weren't, as there was no way I was going to say anything to anyone until I had gotten myself and my wife safely away from that part of Pennsylvania. I also didn't trust that family. I didn't know that they wouldn't force me to buy the place somehow, like tying me up and literally forcing me to. Honestly, if that was my place, I'd be willing to do absolutely anything to unload it. Ironically, we ended up buying a house with a reputation for being haunted. After our Dogman and Bigfoot battle royale, the ghost sounded almost sweet in comparison. We lived in that house for 22 years, and neither of us ever noticed anything strange. Maybe our senses had been dulled by those large cryptids. We learned a lesson about idealizing nature on that day. Don't imagine that woods and jungles are little paradises. They're closer to arenas where the battle for life is fought on a daily and nightly basis. And another thing we learned about that day is the Dogman. I mean, the Dogman might not be as tall as a Sasquatch, and it might not be as strong. I'm guessing it's not nearly as intelligent, although I could be wrong. The one advantage that the canine monster has is that he's willing to get nasty, and he's willing to play dirty. He's less civilized than the least civilized Bigfoot, and there's nothing so low that he would not attempt it if it gained him something to eat or some satisfied pleasure. The Dogman is aptly named because he is a dog. He is an eating machine, and a brutal one at that. I am not doubting your stories of some nice dogmen in the Midwest who befriend kindly old grannies or whatever you want to say. But the Dogman that we saw were of 3 different varieties in terms of looks and breeding, yet they all behaved the same way toward that one peaceful, yet overmatched Bigfoot. I mean, yes, we did see the Bigfoot swarm the area in response to the distress cries of their fellow Sasquatch, but that entire scary turf battle was caused when we saw Sasquatch ambushed by rock-throwing Dogman.
If I wear a spinny hat, will I look all hunky? Will I look like that handsome chap from that TV show, The Monkees? Everybody wants a woolen cat. The scary stories, beanie hat. Everybody knows it's a natural fact. The scary stories, beanie hat. Link is in this video's description if all goes according to plan. Available in black, which is like every color all at once, man. If you want a coloring book full of monstrosity light, then give this a look. It'll give you a fright, right? Scary stories coloring book, werewolf coloring book. And just to make your mind explode, it's a digital download. All it costs is $2.09, and then you will be feeling fine. Coloring monsters today, hey, it's a coloring book, hooray. Okay, link is in the description.
The rumors over, face of deer. It's that hoodie time of year. And you know times are never dull when you got the hoodie with the scary skull. Scary skull. Scary skull. Scary skull. Hoodie, hoodie, skull. Hoodie, skull. Scary skull. Pull over hoodie. Wear a toe string, it's a goodie. You can buy it without a prescription. Just follow the link in this video's description.
Our new EP is Tiffany Walsh, less predictable than a knuckle balsh. I think I just had an epiphany. Let's thank our executive producer, Tiffany. Please join me in thanking our newest channel member, Tiffany Walsh, who gets to see all our recent scary, secret, uncensored Dogman stories, including our most recent one about the lumberjack werewolves. I got complaints that I was giving away too much stuff too quickly, so we're saving today's secret episode, called Dogman Ate My Girlfriend, for next Sunday, as we'll be returning to our once-a-week Sunday schedule for secret members-only stories. If you don't know what I mean about members-only stories or channel memberships, then check out this little message from our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank. Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after, I think, 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more scary stories.